For centuries, we've believed the major aproximate religions mapped out, completely different holy routes.
Right.
Like you look at the historical maps and they resemble a clean medical x-ray. This city belongs to this faith, that ancient road belongs to another, and the histories are they're entirely separate, distinct lines on a page.
Completely siloed.
Exactly. You break your arm, the x-ray shows a jagged white line, and it's binary. Broken or not broken. Safe, categorized, and contained in its own silo. But what if that religious and geographical x-ray was completely misread?
Yeah, that's the big question.
What if, when you adjust the contrast and look at the linguistic roots, Jesus, Moses, and the earliest Muslims were all walking the exact same dirt path on the exact same 10-day loop?
It's a massive shift to even think about.
It really is. So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are promising you a massive aha moment that is going to completely redefine a geographic and spiritual landscape you probably thought was, well, set in stone for over a millennium.
The documents we're examining today form this deeply detailed textual treatise, and it's accompanied by a series of conceptual and topographical maps. We're talking about the Dead Sea region, tribal territories, all of it.
And collectively, this body of research is titled The Journey of Redemption, right? Or Rilat al-Fida in Arabic.
Yes, exactly. And we need to establish the foundation of our conversation immediately. The entire architecture of this groundbreaking thesis, all of the layered alignments between the Quran, the Torah, and the Gospels that we are about to explore belongs entirely to Dr. Khaled Waleed.
All of it.
Every bit of it. He has synthesized these ancient texts to argue that they aren't describing competing religious paradigms. They are describing a single, unified geographic and spiritual journey.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because taking the Abrahamic pilgrimage, specifically the Hajj and the Umrah, and claiming it historically took place on a cross-country loop spanning Jordan and Jerusalem, that requires moving mountains, literally and figuratively.
Oh, absolutely.
To suggest that a tradition involving, millions of people annually has been geographically misunderstood is a massive claim. We're looking at familiar concepts, words that millions of people say every day, but through a completely new lens provided by Dr. Waleed's research.
And to process a claim of that magnitude, we really can't start with the maps.
Right, it's too much all at once.
Exactly. If you jump straight to the cartography, the cognitive dissonance is just too loud. So Dr. Waleed's research begins at the atomic level of the text, which is the linguistics.
The language itself.
Yeah. Before any physical journey can be mapped, the vocabulary of the pilgrimage has to be stripped of centuries of semantic drift, because words evolve.
Yeah. Right. They change based on politics, culture, geography.
Precisely. Their definitions narrow or shift based on those pressures over centuries. Dr. Waleed's treatise argues that to understand the original pilgrimage, we have to look at the root, contextual meanings of these words as they operate internally within the Quran itself.
Rather than relying on, later external dictionaries.
Exactly.
And the most glaring example of this semantic shift, and honestly where Dr. Waleed's treatise really starts dismantling our assumptions, is the word tawaf.
Oh, definitely.
For anyone familiar with the Hajj, tawaf is the visual centerpiece. You picture the immense courtyard, the physical spinning, the mechanical planetary orbit in concentric circles around a stone structure. It's almost always translated as circumambulation.
Right, a physical circling.
But when Dr. Waleed isolates that root word and tracks its usage elsewhere in the Quran, a very different picture emerges, doesn't it?
It does. The methodology Dr. Waleed uses here relies on internal textual consistency. If a word means one thing in a specific ritual context, that definition should logically hold up in other narrative contexts within the same text.
That makes total sense.
Right. So Dr. Waleed points out that the Quran uses the root for tawaf to describe servants in a heavenly setting moving among people, or young children entering family rooms at certain times of the day to check on their elders.
Okay, so if we apply the conventional definition of circumambulation to those verses, the text becomes completely absurd.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Servants aren't walking in planetary orbits around seated guests.
And children aren't walking in literal circles around their parents' beds.
No, of course not.
So it's less like orbiting a planet in space and more like a host making the rounds at a dinner party to care for their guests.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Dr. Waleed's linguistic analysis points toward a reciprocal movement between two parties, filled with care, affection, and active service.
Wow.
Yeah, by redefining tawaf purely through its contextual usage, Dr. Waleed shifts the entire nature of the ritual. It ceases to be this individualistic, mechanical motion aimed at accumulating personal spiritual merit.
It becomes a deeply communal act.
Exactly, an act of spiritual and economic caretaking. Now, the physical act of rotation hasn't disappeared from Dr. Waleed's research, but the scale of that rotation is macroscopic.
So we're zooming way out.
Way out. Dr. Waleed reveals that the true physical rotation isn't around a singular building in a courtyard. The rotation is the entire journey of the pilgrimage itself. It's an expansive regional loop circling around the Dead Sea, which the texts refer to as al-Yam.
Which naturally brings us to the next massive geographical redefinition that Dr. Waleed presents, which is Safa and Marwa.
Right.
Historically, we're taught that Safa and Marwa are two small hills in Mecca. Pilgrims briskly walk or run between these 2 points. But if Dr. Waleed is mapping a macro journey around the Dead Sea, he's essentially arguing that these aren't localized mounds of rock.
Not at all.
He's scaling them up to represent vast geographical territories. How does he justify moving and expanding something so physically specific?
Well, the justification by Dr. Waleed stems from matching textual descriptions of these locations to the broader topography of the Levant. In his treatise, he categorizes Safa as the entire eastern zone of testing and learning.
Okay, the eastern zone.
Right. Geographically, this corresponds to the eastern side of the Dead Sea, running through modern-day Jordan. And the anchor of this region is Petra.
Wait, Petra.
Yes, Petra.
Yeah.
Within Dr. Waleed's framework, Petra is identified with the Quranic term al-Qura, the mother of cities. This entire eastern region of Safa represents the Umrah phase of the journey.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Dr. Waleed frames it as a region rich with the ruins of ancient civilizations, places specifically designed for pilgrims to witness history, test their physical and spiritual endurance, and basically extract wisdom from the past.
Wait, so if Safa is this vast eastern zone of learning in Jordan, Marwa has to be the western counterpart, right?
Exactly.
And Dr. Waleed locates Marwa across the Jordan Valley, centering it entirely on Jerusalem in Palestine, specifically the sacred monument, the Al-Mashar al-Haram in Baqa. And just to clarify for you listening, identifying Baqa as Jerusalem rather than a valley in the Hijaz is an absolute cornerstone of Dr. Waleed's entire thesis. In this mapping, Marwa represents the culmination of the Hajj. It is the location of the Beit al-Mal, the central public treasury.
What's fascinating here is how the visual maps included in Dr. Waleed's Journey of Redemption illustrate this shift. The backdrop zooms out from a localized city grid to a massive, sprawling topographical map of the Jordan Valley Rift.
It's a huge scale.
It is. Safa sits on the eastern highlands, Marwa on the western highlands, with the deep depression of the Dead Sea acting as the axis around which the entire pilgrimage rotates.
I just want to pause on the sheer magnitude of this for a second. When we talk about moving between Safa and Marwa in Dr. Waleed's framework, we aren't talking about an afternoon stroll.
Definitely not.
We are talking about spanning from the arid highlands of Jordan in the east, crossing international borders, traversing river valleys, and ascending into the mountain capital of Jerusalem in the west. It completely transforms a localized ritual into a regional expedition.
And an expedition of that size requires a very different logistical time frame. A regional movement of hundreds of thousands of people engaging in trade, study, and social welfare. It just cannot be compressed into a few days.
Right. That would be impossible.
Exactly. So Dr. Waleed's textual analysis identifies the pilgrimage season not as a fleeting window, but as spanning 4 distinct spring months, roughly corresponding to February through May.
Core months.
Yeah. And the 4th month in this sequence, which aligns with Ramadan, is framed by Dr. Waleed as the greatest Hajj, the absolute peak of this regional convergence.
Okay, so we have a redefined vocabulary thanks to Dr. Waleed. Tawaf is a macroscopic circulation of communal care. Safa and Marwa are vast eastern and western zones divided by the Dead Sea. The time frame spans a third of the year.
Right.
With those parameters established, we can actually trace the physical route. The central graphic in Dr. Waleed's materials is this highly intricate circular diagram. It maps a very specific 10-day journey moving in a clockwise rotation.
It's incredibly detailed.
Instead of just listing the steps, let's actually trace what this would physically look and feel like for an ancient participant based on Dr. Waleed's map.
Well, according to Dr. Waleed, the journey begins conceptually at the end. The starting point is Jerusalem, or Baqa. The pilgrim begins at the sacred mosque, but the initiation of the Hajj isn't marked by a physical step. It's marked by an economic transaction.
Oh, the offering.
Yes, the pilgrim gives the Hadi the material offerings or wealth directly to the Beit al-Mal, the treasury.
This is a crucial distinction in Dr. Waleed's work. The Hadi isn't just a symbolic gesture. Dr. Waleed emphasizes that the purpose of consolidating this wealth in Jerusalem is highly practical.
Highly practical.
It's meant to fund social safety nets, feed the vulnerable, and financially reinforce Baka as a global center of justice and equity. You don't begin your spiritual journey by walking, you begin by divesting yourself of excess wealth to support the community.
Right. It grounds the entire metaphysical journey in stark economic reality.
I love that.
Then once that baseline of social equity is established, Dr. Waleed shows how the physical movement begins. The route moves east from Jerusalem, descending rapidly in elevation. The pilgrim travels down through the Jericho region, crossing the Jordan River Valley and entering the eastern zone, Safa.
Okay.
Dr. Waleed's mapped route allocates 3 to 5 days for this portion of the journey. This is the immersive Umrah phase.
Imagine the sensory experience of that transition. You leave the bustling, wealthy center of Jerusalem, drop down into the intense heat of the Rift Valley, and ascend into the rugged, arid mountains of Jordan.
It's dramatic.
The pilgrim is meant to spend days in the region around Petra. It reminds me of like an intense, immersive capstone project or a university field course.
Yeah.
You don't just show up and graduate, you are intentionally leaving the comforts of the capital to study the ruins of fallen empires in Petra, to confront the harshness of the desert, and to reflect on the transience of human power. You are meant to be tested by the landscape.
That educational component is vital in Dr. Waleed's thesis. After spending those days in the East, absorbing the history and undergoing that internal testing, the physical rotation continues. Dr. Waleed's route traces southward along the eastern rim of the Dead Sea.
Down towards Aqaba.
Exactly. The terrain here is unforgiving, eventually bringing the pilgrim down toward what Dr. Waleed's maps designate as the Southern Gate, located in the region of Aqaba.
From the deep south at Aqaba, the journey pivots. The clockwise rotation turns back west and north. The pilgrim crosses the valley and begins the long ascent back up the mountainous spine of the region.
Right.
Dr. Waleed's map highlights a crucial waypoint on this return leg, which is Hebron. He designates it as the station of blessings and the resting place of the patriarchs. It basically serves as the bridge between the harsh wilderness of the east and the spiritual climax waiting in the west.
And then Dr. Waleed outlines the final phase, which is the approach to Marwa, Jerusalem from the east. The pilgrim doesn't just wander into the city.
No, it's very deliberate.
Highly structured. According to Dr. Waleed's mapped framework, the traveler must ascend the Mount of Olives. Conceptually, his treatise aligns the Mount of Olives with Mount Arafat.
Mount Arafat, that is a massive connection.
It really is. It's the high vantage point where the pilgrim stands, reflecting on the journey, looking out over the city of Jerusalem before the final descent. From there, they pass through the Farewell Pass and finally breach the city walls through the Eastern Gate, specifically the Bab al-Rahma, the Gate of Mercy.
And that initiates the final 7 days of the Hajj back at the sacred mosque.
Exactly, totaling 10 days.
So 3 to 5 days of rigorous learning and testing in the East, a long journey south and back north, 7 days of communal circulation and spiritual culmination in the West, 10 days in total.
It's a massive, highly engineered loop of human movement.
It really is. But here is the friction point for me, and I'm sure for you listening too. If this massive circuit around the Dead Sea is the true original route of the Abrahamic pilgrimage, it couldn't have just spontaneously generated with the advent of the Quran.
Right, that wouldn't make sense historically.
If this was the foundational practice of the region, we should see structural evidence of it in older texts too.
And that exact question is where Dr. Waleed's work transitions from a provocative linguistic reinterpretation of one text into a grand, unified theory of Abrahamic geography.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
It really does. Dr. Waleed's treatise doesn't isolate the Quran. He takes this exact 10-day clockwise topographical map and overlays it directly onto the text of the Hebrew Bible. And the alignments he finds are remarkably precise.
Wow.
The baseline evidence, according to Dr. Waleed, starts with the central Torah commandment of the Shalosh Regalim.
Oh, right. When you look at the Shalosh Regalim, which are the 3 annual pilgrimage festivals commanded in the Torah, Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot, the mandates are incredibly specific.
Very specific.
The text dictates that all able-bodied participants must appear before God in the place he will choose. Historically and textually, that place is centralized in Jerusalem. But more importantly, the mandate explicitly commands that they must not appear empty-handed. They are required to bring offerings.
Which perfectly matches Dr. Waleed's concept.
Exactly. Dr. Waleed points out that this economic mandate is identical in structure and purpose to the giving of the hadi to the Bayt al-Mal at the onset of the Hajj. The economic engine of the pilgrimage is exactly the same.
The economic parallel is strong, but if we connect this to the bigger picture, Dr. Waleed's geographic parallel is what anchors the theory.
Okay, tell me about the geography.
Dr. Waleed's treatise pulls a very specific, frequently overlooked verse into focus, which is Isaiah 16.1. In the context of biblical geography, Dr. Waleed uses this verse as a literal map key. The prophet issues a directive: send lambs for the ruler of the land, from Selah in the wilderness to the mountain of the daughter of Zion.
Okay, let's dissect the geography of that verse using Dr. Waleed's new framework. Selah is a Hebrew word that literally translates to rock.
Right.
Historical and biblical dictionaries universally identify Selah as the capital of the ancient kingdom of Edom, which is Petra.
Yes.
And Petra sits at the absolute center of the eastern zone, Safa. And the mountain of the daughter of Zion is indisputably Jerusalem, which represents the western zone, Marwa.
The implications of Isaiah 16.1, when viewed through Dr. Waleed's lens, are staggering. He shows that the verse is a literal logistical command to physically transport sacrificial offerings from the eastern highlands of Petra across the wilderness depression to the western heights of Jerusalem.
That's literal proof.
Yes, it is textual proof from the Hebrew Bible of moving the pilgrimage offering from Safa to Marwa.
Yeah.
It mirrors the exact east-to-west trajectory mapped out in Dr. Waleed's journey of redemption.
And the physical infrastructure of the ancient world supports this movement. You don't move thousands of people and animals across the Levant without established highways.
No, you need serious roads.
Right. Dr. Waleed highlights the ancient route known as the Way of the Patriarchs, or Derek Havat. This was the primary north-south artery running along the central mountainous watershed of Israel and Palestine, passing directly through Hebron and culminating in Jerusalem.
Which matches modern-day Highway 60.
Exactly. And Dr. Waleed points out that this ancient highway is the exact road required for the final leg of the mapped route. Moving from the southern turn near Aqaba, traveling north through the Station of Blessings in Hebron, and delivering the pilgrim to the gates of Jerusalem.
The argument Dr. Waleed's constructing here fundamentally alters how we view textual history.
It really does.
His thesis suggests that the Quran is not attempting to establish a brand new, isolated geography in a vacuum. Instead, Dr. Waleed posits that the Quranic text is actually correcting, detailing, and restoring the original shared Abrahamic geography that the Torah had already documented centuries prior.
So the route from the eastern wilderness to Jerusalem, the centralization of economic offerings, the utilization of the patriarchal highways, Dr. Waleed is saying these aren't competing traditions.
No.
They are descriptions of the same shared physical reality.
Precisely.
So if this route was so foundational to the Jewish pilgrims on the Way of the Patriarchs, it stands to reason that first-century figures born into this tradition would be walking that exact same road.
Right, they'd have to be.
This brings us to the part of Dr. Waleed's research that honestly gave me absolute vertigo.
I know exactly what you're going to bring up.
Yeah, Dr. Waleed goes a step further and pulls the narrative of the New Testament into this unified geographic loop. The question he poses is simple, but huge. When we track the movements of Jesus in the Gospels, particularly his final approach to Jerusalem, how does it fit into this Dead Sea circuit?
And the baseline context Dr. Waleed establishes starts in the Gospel of Luke. Luke records that Jesus' family made annual pilgrimage trips to Jerusalem for the Passover. This confirms they were active, observant participants in the regional pilgrimage cycles.
Right, they knew the routes.
They knew the routes, the requirements, the staging grounds. But Dr. Waleed's journey of redemption drills down into the highly specific, ritualistic actions required before entering the sacred space.
For instance, Dr. Waleed examines the Quranic command of tawaaf. During the pilgrimage, before a pilgrim is permitted to circumambulate the ancient house, they are commanded to remove their dirt or undergo a process of cleansing, right? This is tawaaf.
Yes.
Dr. Waleed connects this directly to the Gospel of John, chapter 11, which notes that many people went up from the surrounding country to Jerusalem before the Passover, specifically to purify themselves.
And parallel is right there.
It is. The theological and logistical concept of a mandatory physical and spiritual cleansing prior to crossing the threshold of the holy city is identical in both paradigms.
And this raises an important question, right? The alignment becomes astonishing when Dr. Waleed identifies the specific geographical location of this purification.
Oh, this part is incredible.
His treatise analyzes the Quranic phrase Faj Amik, which is traditionally translated as a deep valley or a distant mountain pass from which pilgrims arrive. Through the topographical overlay of the Jerusalem approach, Dr. Waleed identifies this deep valley as the Kidron Valley.
The Kidron Valley.
Specifically, he points to the area known as Gethsemane, situated in the deep ravine between the Mount of Olives and the eastern walls of Jerusalem.
And the etymology of Gethsemane is profound in this context, as Dr. Wall points out. In Aramaic, Gat Shmanim literally means oil press.
An oil press, yes.
Dr. Waleed argues that this deep valley is the literal and metaphorical press. It's the designated staging area where the spiritual dirt, the sins, the tufath, are forcefully pressed out and cleansed from the pilgrim before they ascend into the sacred precinct.
It is the basin of purification on the final eastern approach.
It gives me chills.
And following the route westward from that deep valley, Dr. Waleed's alignments become incredibly cinematic. In the gospel narratives, there is a poignant moment where Jesus stands on the Mount of Olives. From this elevated vantage point, he looks down over the city of Jerusalem and weeps over it.
Right.
Dr. Waleed brilliantly aligns the specific geographical location and emotional posture with the Islamic ritual of standing at Mount Arafat. The Mount of Olives is Mount Arafat in Dr. Waleed's framework.
Wait, so he's saying they are literally the same conceptual place?
Exactly. It is the designated high ground where the pilgrim pauses, reflects on the weight of the journey, and looks upon the sacred destination before the final descent.
So Dr. Waleed is arguing that when Jesus stands on the Mount of Olives looking over the valley, he is, within this unified framework, literally performing the standing at Arafat.
Yes.
And the path down into the city continues to lock into place. The Gospels record Jesus coming toward the city from the vicinity of Bethany. Dr. Waleed analyzes the etymology of Bethany. In Hebrew, it's Beit Shimni, meaning the second house. Dr. Waleed identifies this location with the Islamic concept of Thanyat al-Wada, the farewell pass. It serves as the final staging ground, the last breath taken before the descent into the city.
And then the culmination of the journey is the entrance into the city itself. The Gospels, fulfilling the prophecies of Zechariah, record Jesus entering Jerusalem from the east through the Eastern Gate.
The Eastern Gate?
Yes. In the mapped framework of the Islamic pilgrimage provided in Dr. Waleed's research, the pilgrim completing the journey must enter Bakka, Jerusalem, from the east. Specifically, they must pass through the Bab al-Rahma, the Gate of Mercy, which is universally known today as the Golden Gate.
Okay, we have to pause and just digest the sheer density of this alignment.
It's a lot.
It is. Dr. Waleed is arguing, using linguistic roots, historical geography, and comparative textual analysis, that when Jesus walked down from the Mount of Olives, crossed through the deep valley of the Kidron, underwent the spiritual pressure of Gethsemane, and entered the Golden Gate, he was not just moving randomly through a city.
Yeah.
He was literally physically performing the precise required steps of the final leg of the Hajj.
That is the ultimate conclusion of the maps provided in Dr. Waleed's Journey of Redemption. It completely shatters the silos we've built around these texts.
Totally shatters them.
For over a millennium, theological historians have read the Quran, the Torah, and the Gospels as if they exist in separate universes, describing different worlds, establishing competing rituals on different patches of sand.
Right.
But Dr. Waleed's research forces us to consider that when stripped of centuries of political and geographic assumptions, these texts are describing the exact same physical footsteps on the exact same dirt aimed at the exact same spiritual goal.
If you're listening to this right now and feeling that profound sense of vertigo, that is the completely natural reaction to a paradigm shift of this scale.
It takes a minute to process.
It really does. Dr. Khaled Waleed has essentially taken a map that the world largely believed was tethered strictly to the deserts of the Hijaz, and with astonishing textual precision, overlaid it onto the complex topography of Jerusalem, Jordan, and the Dead Sea.
Which radically shifts the center of gravity of the entire Abrahamic world.
Exactly.
The implications for how we understand human history are profound. We are culturally conditioned to accept a narrative of perpetual religious conflict, of faiths endlessly fighting over different patches of ground, each laying exclusive claim to the truth and the territory.
Right, that's the whole historical narrative we're taught.
But Dr. Waleed's synthesis dismantles that narrative entirely. It reveals not a history of division, but a history of a shared, continuous physical classroom.
It suggests that the overarching mission of these prophetic figures, from Abraham to Moses to Isaiah to Jesus to Muhammad, was completely unified.
Unified.
The goal wasn't to establish competing tribal rituals. The goal was to guide humanity through a shared, rigorous journey of testing and learning in the eastern wilderness of Safa, to enforce the giving of wealth to the vulnerable through the Beit al-Mal, and to gather humanity at a unified utopian center of justice in Jerusalem.
To cement this in our minds, the macro-level view of this unified loop in Dr. Waleed's work is elegantly simple. It is a vast, clockwise circle around the lowest point on Earth.
Right.
You begin in the West, in Jerusalem, contributing to the treasury to ensure social equity. You cross east into Safa, centering on the ancient ruins of Petra in Jordan for a period of immersive historical learning. You trace the arid edge of the Dead Sea south to Aqaba.
Then the pivot.
You turn back, ascending the ancient way of the patriarchs through the blessings of Hebron, moving steadily north and west.
And then the microscopic final approach, where all three textual traditions perfectly converge under Dr. Waleed's theory. You approach the city from the east. You stand at the Mount of Olives, Arafat, looking over Baca, the Valley of Weeping. You begin the descent through the farewell pass of Bethany. You cross the deep valley, the Kidron, cleansing yourself in the metaphorical press of Gethsemane. And finally, you cross the threshold into the sacred monument, into Marwa, through the Eastern Gate, the Golden Gate.
It is a stunning piece of architectural, geographical, and spiritual synthesis by Dr. Waleed. The way his research connects these ancient, seemingly disparate dots forces a complete reevaluation of religious geography.
It is dense, it is complex, and it challenges almost every conventional baseline we have. But the internal logic of the text, when viewed through this specific linguistic and geographical lens Dr. Waleed provides, is incredibly compelling. So taking all of this in, what does this mean for us today looking at the modern physical landscape of that region?
Well, there is a final, highly evocative point drawn directly from the textual analysis of that final entrance, the Golden Gate or Bab al-Rahma. Within the sources utilized in Dr. Waleed's research, there is a prominent prophecy from the biblical book of Ezekiel regarding this specific eastern gate. Ezekiel states that the gate must remain closed to the public because the Lord, the God of Israel, entered through it.
Right, that's a very famous prophecy.
Consequently, both Jewish and Christian traditions historically maintain that this gate will remain sealed shut until the arrival or return of the Messiah.
And if you walk the perimeter of the old city of Jerusalem today and look at the eastern wall, that prophecy is visually manifest. The Golden Gate is physically bricked up. It is sealed solid with massive stone blocks.
Precisely. The visual reality matches the textual prophecy. So if the research we've discussed today from Dr. Waleed is accurate, if this very gate is the ultimate threshold of the historical Abrahamic pilgrimage, the literal doorway to Marwa, and the required path to complete the journey of redemption.
Yeah.
How does the fact that this gate sits physically sealed change our understanding of the current era? If the true unified path of spiritual and social justice requires passing through that specific gate, the question becomes, is humanity simply waiting for the final loop of this ancient journey to be unlocked?
Oh, wow. That is an incredible thought to leave you with, a physical blockade waiting for a spiritual key.
Truly.
We highly encourage you to seek out the visual maps and the detailed textual arguments provided in Dr. Khaled Waleed's Journey of Redemption. Trace the topography of the Dead Sea Loop for yourself. Look at the linguistic roots. Ponder these incredible unifications of text and terrain.
It's worth seeing with your own eyes.
Absolutely. And above all, keep questioning the historical x-rays you've been handed, because the truth of our shared history might be infinitely more connected than we ever realized. Keep learning, keep digging, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.